Women Who Own It podcast spotlights women business owners who are pioneers in their field, setting trends, blazing trails, and creating game-changing innovations. Brought to you by WeBank, the largest certifier of women-owned businesses in the U.S. and a leading advocate for women business owners and entrepreneurs. And me, Allison Maslan. I've been a business owner for the last 35 years. I'm the Wall Street Journal best-selling author of the book Scale or Fail. So join our bold community of women who built it, grew it, and own it. I'll see you on the show. Welcome to the Women Who Own It podcast, brought to you by WeBank. And my name is Allison Maslan. I am your host. I am also the founder of Pinnacle Global Network, where we mentor business owners to grow and scale their company all over the world. And this podcast is brought to you by business leaders for women business leaders. So today is no exception. We are here to bring you someone so inspiring that is also going to help you to see the vision of the future and what's possible for you and your business. Suzy Batiz is a serial creator and expert in entrepreneurial intuition who built an empire by challenging societal norms after rising from life's lowest lows by following an alive idea. Best known as the creator and CEO of Poo Pourri, the all-natural before-you-go toilet spray, and game-changing household cleaning line, Supernatural. Today, Suzy teaches entrepreneurs to tune in to their intuition and turn on their body intelligence to achieve a natural, abundant flow state in life and in business. Suzy has received numerous awards, and in 2019, she was named one of Forbes' richest self-made women in America. Suzy, I am so glad you're here.
Oh, hi, Allison. I'm so happy to be connecting with you again.
I know. And so I had Suzy, we were blessed to have you on our stage at our Scale event last year, and you rocked the house. Everybody loved you. And so I was just thrilled that we were going to have you on the show.
Thank you. Yeah, such a great group of women. Oh my gosh, incredible.
Yeah. So your story is amazing, and but it hasn't been without its struggle. And so for those of you that don't know your story, you know, before you hit this, you know, created this big enterprise, you had some bankruptcies, you had, you know, lots of challenges before hitting 40. And I think it's important for people to hear this kind of story, because they know, so they can know that just because I'm having struggle doesn't mean that success isn't on the other side of the door.
Yeah.
So what was that time like for you, and why do you think there was so much struggle in your business life?
You know, I think that, you know, my first bankruptcy was, I was married, bankrupt, divorced by the time I was 20 years old. So I often say it's like the rodeo rider that comes out of the gate opens and then they just fall and you're like, hey, they never got to ride. That was kind of my first entrepreneurial experience. But I didn't give up after that. So I made a list the other day between jobs and businesses, about 27. So most of that was before I was 38, because I've only had one job since then, and that is Poo Pourri, right? But I think that what happened was I was always focused on making money. I really thought that money was going to get me out, and I wasn't ever focused on what I wanted to do, like a passion or anything that was in my heart, right? Or any sort of, you know, we use words like purpose now, or those things. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. I really just thought if I create a business, I was a hustler. Okay. Like, I was literally like, my son wants to write a book called Suburban Hustle, you know, because I was literally like, if I needed money, then I was like, you know, convincing manufacturers that they should get rid of their excess inventory. And I was selling truckloads of gearboxes and fabric and So I always had a job. Even if I had a job, but I also had a side hustle, because I thought that side hustle was going to get me out of the state I was in, ultimately getting to that I was going to be worthy and worth something and blah, 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 blah. So
Right.
I believe that the first part of my 38 years was really off center because I was only interested in making money. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, that's kind of what we are taught, right? And what they teach in entrepreneurial school. Or even, you're in college, it's like find a career that is going to make you money. There's not really a lot of talk of, hey, really find what lights you up, you
Yeah.
know?
No. And so that wasn't even a concept. I remember being about 40 something and somebody said, what do you want? And I'm like, I get to choose what I want. Like that was like an aha to me. Right. So yeah, we're just programmed to think it's all about money. And then what happens is, most people live their lives. And then at some point, some sort of, I had what I call the luxury of losing everything. My second bankruptcy at 38, when everything was taken away, my house, the cars, everything that I thought was valuable was removed and stripped away. And there was no choice but to face myself and really go, what have you been up to and what are you doing? I don't wish that on anyone. It was a luxury because we rarely get those timeouts. But I got like a really hard timeout and I was able to go, what are you doing here, Suzy? And really reassess how I was operating and how I was living life.
So you got to rewrite your story, really clean slate.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us are kind of in that situation right now. Some of us are really, as we've been in a global, pandemic timeout, it's a really good time to kind of look around and be like, is this what I want to be doing? And does this turn me on and light me up? And if life were to end tomorrow, do I feel fulfilled and happy? And if not, let's start making some changes towards what we want.
Yeah, I mean, I love this so much, and I love that you speak about this because it's not what you typically hear. But I truly believe that if you're only going after the money, I mean, where is the real drive going to come from?
Yeah.
If you're not excited and passionate about it, what's going to get you through those tough times,
You don't
right?
have anything to get you through, right? So that's the reason I believe all of those businesses failed, is because there wasn't enough energy behind it from my own passion. I'd be like, oh, it didn't work, let's move on to something else. So not that they were bad ideas, but they weren't alive within me, so that didn't give me that extra force and energy that I needed to actually pull through and make it work.
Right, and figure out a way. So what was the change for you? What finally changed that pivotal moment?
Yeah, well, I had what I call a spiritual sabbatical for 4 years, in between, 38 and 42, to where I decided I'd gone to a Byron Katie workshop, and she had a book called Loving What Is. And I came out of there and had no desire for money. Like, no, all of the desire for success or what I'd been driving for was actually gone out of my body. So I was just sitting at home feeling at peace for really the first time in my life. And I was fine living on my husband's income. We weren't rich, but it was great. And then at a dinner party, a family member asked about bathroom odor, if it could be covered. And I just felt this like jolt in my body. And I was like, I can do that with oils, because I had been a practitioner of aromatherapy for the past, 15 years prior to that. I just loved it. I never thought about it as a product, but I completely saw that this could happen. So then I started on my Poo Pourri journey, never thinking about it being a business. I just wanted to make it work. And then once it worked, it was so good. Like it's like having a secret, like you can't keep it to yourself. So that's how I re-entered the business world. Really not even thinking I want to be in business, but more as if, you are a woman that happens to get pregnant with a child, and, you're just looking like, okay, I want to birth this. Like, I need to bring this into the world. And that was a decision I made within myself, and haven't regretted it. But I do business completely different now than I did before. I have different priorities and values within my being.
Well, let's talk about that, because what is the difference, internally for you, and then also just, you know, your team, your values, your mission, all of that? What is different?
Yeah, I think what's different is Poo Pourri really lit me up and excited me, and I decided early on that if I was going to go back into business, that knowing that it can all be wiped out in a second, that we don't know what's going to happen, that I was going to at least have a good time. Because what I say is what's worse than losing everything is losing everything and realizing, number one, you didn't have a good time doing it. And number two, looking at the ways you did business, right? It's like having to face that. So what I decided is I was going to do business the way I wanted, and I was going to be able to have fun. And if it wasn't fun, I wasn't going to do it. And I've told my company forever, the minute I'm not having fun, I'm out of here, which probably scares them a lot, but it's really true. But that ripples throughout the culture. I've had many people come to me. For example, someone's in quarantine with me, and she started a job called the happiness manager, and she was in customer service, and she came to me one day and said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I said, what do you want to do? And she goes, I want to be a happiness manager. I'm like, what's that? She said, I just make employees happy. I'm like, okay. So we create a new position for her. So we have a culture within our company that we know that if it doesn't turn you on, and this is an isolated project, we all have to do those one-off things, but I'm talking about the general thing that if you're exhausted at the end of the day, if you can't feel like you're moving on, then we need to try to reposition you within the company. And if there's nothing within the company, then we gracefully help you, exit the company so that, you can do what you need to do in the world, which I believe that we actually need right now to create the shift that we need to into it.
It sounds like, you had to get in alignment, but you're also about your team being in alignment as well.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like even, I have a really close person that works with me that just called me a couple days ago and told me their secret dream that they always wanted to do. And now that I know that, it's like, great, let's make that happen. And this is a person I depend on a lot. But what I know is at the end of my life, one of the kind of, I guess, little tricks I do is I fast forward and I pretend like I'm on my deathbed in my mind. And I go, if I look back, what would I have wanted to do? And I do that constantly as an evaluation to see, like, is this something, would I regret not doing this? And would I be okay, going forward with this? So that's sort of something that I do to keep myself in check, to make sure that I feel fulfilled. For example, there's been times, Poo Pourri's 14 years old. And there's been so many times I've been tired and I didn't want to run it anymore. And that's like, I'm out of here, in my mind. And then I look back, or, I decide to go on a hiatus for, a couple months from work. And then I look back and I go, if I were at the end of my life, I would have wanted to take care of this thing that I brought into the world. That's my bigger priority, even though I may be tired in the moment. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
That way I can really know what my true heart's desire really is. And it doesn't always mean I want to run off to Italy with some man, which sounds fun. But, it's really even beyond that is I want to be responsible to the things I bring into the world. And sometimes that means pushing through a little bit of things that I may or may not want in the moment.
Yeah. And I do think that when you're tired, you're not thinking clearly, and so when you take that time to rest, you can get re-inspired and make decisions from a more clear perspective.
Oh, yeah. And my team is so amazing. I will let them know. Most of them have been with me for quite a while, and I'll let them know, like, I need space. Like, I need some time to think clearly. And what's amazing about that, when I give myself space, I usually come back with a million ideas. I feel completely re-energized and tuned back in.
Yeah.
I just have to remember to give myself more space like that.
I know. We forget. We
Yeah.
forget. So what do you feel like that if you were to look, overall, that sort of 30,000 foot view with Poo Pourri, what do you feel like the secret sauce is? Because, you've been in business 14 years, so that is a while, but you did scale pretty quickly and you've been able to sustain, even though I'm sure there's been some ups and downs, especially now. But what do you think that is? Because you've got business owners that are listening right now and they're like, God, I'd really love those big leaps,
Yeah, I think, don't be as interested in the big leaps as much as, we always talk about up and to the right. Like let's just keep going up and to the right and up and to the right and up and to the right. I think there's a myth right now in the business world that you have to scale and you have to have those big leaps and those big jumps in order to, in order to make it, especially startups. It's like if I don't have, $2 million, I'm not going to be able to get off the ground. I would
Mm-hmm.
argue that that's true. Money doesn't always solve every problem. You know that. It's like, so there is some creativity and resourcefulness. But I believe that our particular secret sauce would be that we really are passion and creative driven. So my love is creativity and change, so which can be kind of hard on an organization. So where I play the biggest part is in our creative marketing and how we look in the world, how we, you know, so I'm kind of like a CCO slash CEO. So
Yeah.
what we do is we really identify what turns a person on and try to put them in a job that's closest to that, because that's going to turn the whole organization on. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
one of our biggest secret sauces. And that way we're always inspired. We're always excited. I say that we're a creative agency that happens to sell, I was going to say smell, smell an amazing product.
Oh,
Playing
that's
on
funny.
words there.
But you
Yeah.
are so creative, Suzy. I mean, your branding, everything about you, it's consistent and there's always some little surprises.
Yes.
And I do feel like that it's never boring, right? You're always having people take another look like, oh, what are they up to now?
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of our really, know what your strength is as an organization and really play on that strength. So our strength is in our creativity and our flexibility and adaptability and our speed. So one of the things that helped us in the recent pandemic was that I think I was sharing with you earlier. The first quarter we got hit pretty hard because we were mostly retail, and while we had an ecom business, it wasn't as strong as I wanted it to be. It wasn't as robust. So what we did is I was here getting surgery in LA, and I called my team and I said, how quickly can we get in the hand sanitizer business? And we were from idea to on shelf, it was 6 weeks. We were able to launch get into a completely new category, launch a hand sanitizer. We sold millions of bottles that helped pull us out. But what did that was creativity. It was resourcefulness and being able to
Mhm.
go, can we pull our resources together? Because we've kept really small and adaptable and flexible, we limit the amount of processes we have, or we have enough processes to keep things in place so that we can actually be more adaptable and flexible. And I think that's another one of our secret powers is we don't want to be fat and have all these layers and policies and procedures and processes, because we can't move very fast. Take any large organization. For example, I was asking a friend, it would take one of the big guys 18 months to get that on market. We were on shelf in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah. I mean, that really is the advantage of small business. And, you have to be innovative and you have to be nimble. And that's the key.
And
But
play to your strengths.
yeah, yeah. And, in a typical market, you may have taken longer and tested it a little bit and all that. But this was like, no,
We
we
got to
got to
go.
get it out there now. So
Which is
that
where
was,
intuition comes in, and I don't know how intuitive you have to be to go, oh, there's a huge demand for hand sanitizer. What
right.
we didn't know is if a Poo Pourri hand sanitizer could sell. We proved that it did. Well, what's so exciting about the team taking that leap with me and kind of going, I don't know, let's see, they did it. And then now we're looking at all other kind of products that we can branch out into that we didn't even know before, because we were too busy doing consumer studies and seeing what the consumer wants and blah 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 blah. So we were able to really take advantage of, in a really incredible, which looks like a crisis, but actually, we all know that crisis precedes some sort of transformation or opportunity. And it was like that was the opportunity we were able to jump in.
The breakdown before the breakthrough.
Totally, that's a
Yeah.
creative cycle. We forget it's create, sustain, destroy. We forget about the destruction that has to happen in order for something new to be created.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely, there's going to be, when we look back in the next few years, look back at all of the innovation and creativity and change that happens. I mean, mind boggling. So
Exactly.
just talking about cash for a second, just because, obviously what you did created cash flow, and you never took on investors, which I want to highlight because we hear about that so much, first round, second round, and it takes up so much energy. Why did you decide not to take on investors? And, what was your thinking around that?
Well, really, mostly it was, there were a couple things. So the reason I filed bankruptcy when I was 38 is I was in the final stages of getting $5 million in funding for an idea I had called Greener Grass. It's actually a great idea. It was 20 years ahead of its time, but it was matching, it was a recruiting platform that matched a person's culture with a company's culture first. So you knew your cultural match, and then it would go down into technical skills. And now all we talk about is culture. Somehow I knew that 20 something years ago.
Yeah.
Um, but I had leveraged really everything we had, and I was really seeking to launch with this funding, right? And thank God the stock market crashed. I never got the money because it would have been horrible for me to think of owing somebody $5 million. I already filed bankruptcy on a little debt, but not to that extent, that would have felt worse on my being. So that was one thing, is I had agreed within myself to never being debt. Even when to me, whenever I took on money from an investor, that's still debt, right?
Yeah.
So that was my one no. I'm gonna make it work the way it is. And then secondly was really about control. There's three things. So the second was about control. I wanted to make sure that I um, could build the brand and operate the way I wanted to operate. There's things that I knew that no one else would know. And the third thing is I didn't trust myself enough that I would make sure I paid those people back, and I wouldn't always consider probably the health of the company first.
Mm-hmm.
So those were my three factors. And I do want to point out that I built the company during the recession. So my first product was sold in April 2007, and we were in really our toughest economic times in 2008 and 2009. And I had done $1 million a year the first year with a $5 product, 14 years ago. So, so really, not only did I not have investors, I built it during the toughest economic times. The key there was I had a product that actually was great. So a lot of times when entrepreneurs come to me, they'll come to me with a good product or something that's already out there. What we really need right now is innovation, and we need something that's great. I say that all the time. If I said, hey, Allison, I went to a restaurant last night, and you're like, how was it? I'll be like, it's good. Like, you're probably not going to go there, or you might, but you're not going to run there. But if I go, oh my God, it was so great, you're not going to believe the appetizer we had. You're gonna go there. You're gonna be like, guess what? We need to go eat this at this restaurant. So you need to really push that innovation and push that product development or services, whatever you have, to it being great, because that's what we need in the world. We don't need any more stuff. We actually need innovation and something that's new.
Yeah, you said so much there. I mean, you tapped into a demand, like you found a great product and something that people needed. And so you were able to, sell some pretty big quantities early on, which is phenomenal. It's interesting. I just interviewed Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank.
Oh,
And
I
here,
love that.
and she, what do? They invest in companies. And she was saying, I highly recommend that you don't get investors if you, if you can avoid it, because you're giving away some of your business,
100%.
you know?
And you're going to have to answer to them. You're going to have to tell them why you did everything you did. And what's so interesting about running a business off intuition is there's not always a reason. There's not always a business plan, or sometimes you just don't know, right? But you have a feeling. And for example, with that was our first viral video. Like, just something in my gut said, okay, it's time. Like, we got to get on with it. Like, it's time to go. And I knew I didn't have money for traditional advertising. Well, even if I had the money for traditional advertising, what I didn't have is the distribution to make that, worth spending, whatever amount of money to have a television ad. So I found these rogue marketers, and that's when I started. We really pioneered YouTube advertising, of direct marketing type advertising. And, but I did that from a gut feeling. I remember my husband at the time was like, what is going on? And I'm like, I don't know, we got to go. Like, I just feel it. Everything in my body says we got to go. And I'm not sure if I had had an investor, they would have agreed with that, you know? So there's been lots of decisions over the years that I've been able to make just off of my own gut. Some of them good, some of them, most of them are good when it comes like that, but I didn't want to have to answer to anyone.
Yeah, I remember when I first saw that video some years back, and I was like, this is brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
You know, this was brilliant. This is long before you and I had met, but, and you know, it sounds to me, the theme here is really listening to your gut. And that's like, you know, your CFO, like I work closely with my CFO and, you know, we're talking strategy, but they're not going to be able to tap into your gut.
No way.
And that's right. And so you've got to be able to listen to that and then kind of sell that idea to your team. In a sense, you make the final decision, but you know, they're trying to connect with basically your decisions through intuition. It's interesting.
Yeah, which can be, you know, it took quite a few years. You know, now they know. You know, I've literally, one of the hardest things, I was talking with my daughter just last week about, she had to say no to moving into a house, you know, and her boyfriend, and she's like, Mom, everything in my body had to no to this. And he was angry, you know, because, so what happens with being so intuitive and following that intuition is because a lot of other people can't see any proof and they don't understand and in the moment. So you have to be that person to be able to go, it's a no, you know, I've like laid down on my, you know, conference table, like, I'm so sorry, but we can't do this. You know, this is 100% no here.
Yeah. So it's really, really listening to that. Now, you know, as far as the cash crunches, you know, every business goes through it. I'm sure you've been through it. A lot of people are going through it now with COVID and all that. So how do you manage when there is a cash crunch? I mean, where do you go in your head? And then what are some of the strategies that have worked for you that, you know, maybe others can tap into?
Yeah, I was just telling you a little about that. We're having a cash crunch for probably the first time, like, except for my first Christmas. I had a cash crunch, and I'll just tell you what I did then. I just started the company with $25,000, and I didn't have enough money to buy inventory to get through Christmas. And I called one of my friends that's a financial advisor, and I said, I think I need to get an investor. That's what I did first off. I did what everyone else did. And he's such an angel, not an angel investor, but he's an angel of a person. And had he not, he probably would have invested in my company, and I would have been in a not great situation possibly. But he said, keep your company as long as you can. You just need to figure out a way. And so I called my manufacturers and I asked for, back then I was getting 30-day terms. So I asked for 90 days or 120 days just to get myself through Christmas. And they actually offered, if I would send the raw goods and the components, that they would fill all of the product, but not charge me until I sold it. So basically they were helping fund me with inventory, right? But the first thing I did is I just asked.
Yeah.
So what happened is right now we got hit, I think I told you, with a multi-million-dollar order in the first quarter that got canceled, which really put a dent in a company that is self-funded. And what I've done is I've really dug into looking at, because we have plenty of cash and we don't have any loans, but I was looking into really the flow of money. And what I realized is that now, especially during COVID, people, our vendors were typically, and they have been paying this, let's just say one of the big, you know, chain stores in America. Yeah, so what happened was, what I was able to see was really where is the cash flow issue? Because it wasn't a lack of cash, it's a flow issue. So that's what you need to look at. And what I found is that we were paying we have really amazing credit, and you know, one of my things is integrity, and when we say we're going to pay you, we do. So we were paying most of our vendors and manufacturers within 30 days, but the big chain stores and things now with COVID aren't paying us for, you know, 90 to 120 days. And so there's like a 60 to 90 day gap that we're floating millions of dollars. And then we got into hand sanitizer business. They wanted us to pay millions of dollars up front. So it put like a crunch on it. So what I did is went old school, and I went back to to our suppliers and said, hey, here's what's happening. You know, we have 30-day terms. We need 90-day terms right now. And I just did this literally just yesterday. And I got back a couple of emails, and it was like, wow, people don't usually give us heads up about this. We really appreciate it. And yeah, we will do that. So it's really about getting resourceful, but before you're resourceful, looking at and finding out where is the real problem. You know, do I need to go out? Is this a time to take on debt? You know, I've never taken on any debt. But in order to do that, I had to really look at the situation. And what I realized is it was really just a traffic jam. And we just needed to, you know, extend some of these things out. And I've done this for so many, actually, women business owners, Allison, when they come and they say, oh, I need funding. And I'll look at their spreadsheets. And I'm like, no, if you just ask for 90-day terms here, 90-day terms there, and if you can, like, you know, get some POs. And I try to show people it's really like a game of Jenga, where you can start putting puzzle pieces together. And that's where the creativity and resourcefulness comes in. And that's a very big part of business. And another thing, I was on the phone with my kids last week, and I said, you know what we used to do when we didn't have money when y'all were little? Because, you know, I lived most of my life pretty poor. And I said, you know, we'd have garage sales. So I'd look through the house, anything that we could sell, right, to create some cash. And so that's what I just did with the company. You know, we were sitting on, you know, actually like 1 million excess bottles, you know, and if I sold those at retail, that's $10 million, you know. So I was like, what do we do with all this excess inventory? So we're having some big, everybody be looking online. We're having what we call some flush sales. So we're having
flush sales. I love it. That's my
we're having some flush sales. And my daughter the other day was like, I guess there's no difference between, you know, running a family and running a business. I'm like, there's no difference, honey. It's just a little bigger.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And I've always said it's just finding that missing puzzle piece.
Oh, yeah.
The answer is always there.
To me, it's so fun.
It really is. It really is. And so it's just, it really is being creative. But I think what happens, Suzy, is that people get scared.
Oh, yeah.
And then they freeze in their brain. They're in a place of panic. So it's hard to get creative. So when you get into that fear space, let's say, what do you do to shift out of that?
Well, I love that you bring that up, because that's what happens. And that happened to me too. You know, I was like, oh boy, you know, what happens if, you know, if all of a sudden, you know, I can't sell goods anymore? You know, what happens if the business goes under? You know, we all have those fear stories that go on in our mind. And what I do is I actually feel my feelings fully. It's hard to say, but I literally, like at 3 a.m., you know, it's those things when you sit up, you know, you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't sleep, which I did for a couple of days. And I just sat up in my bed at 3 a.m. and I just felt like, oh my God, I'm a failure. You know, what's going to happen? I'm going to lose everything. I literally let myself go there so I could feel all of that. And then once I felt that, it sort of passed. And then, you know, some new ideas started popping in. But you really can't do anything, or you can't. What I found is I'm not effective when I'm running out of fear, and I just use the same strategy with what's happening right now. You know, with the protests and things. Like, I was really terrified and cried all day Sunday. And when I really sat with myself, what I realized is it really reminded me of my parents growing up. You know, when I was really young. So I did some hypnotherapy on that. And then once I was able to clear and balance within myself, then I made really great decisions and have been speaking up, but not from a place of fear or anger, but from a place of really being centered and solid. So I would recommend that you do whatever practice you need to do. Yeah, I meet with a therapist every week, and that is what really keeps me and my energies clean so that I can make the clearest decisions. I'm not always going to make the right decision, but I don't want to be making those decisions from a place of fear or anger or, you know, sadness. I want to feel those feelings so that I can move on with clarity.
Yeah. It really is all about alignment. So, and not making the decisions from fear, like really just stopping.
Which is the worst thing, because you want to, you think, I've got to run, I got to go, and and I did that. I breathed down my exec's neck for a couple of days, and they're all like, ah, and then everybody's scared, and then I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work, and then I'm like, okay, I need to just feel what's going on here. What I know, what the reality is my company's not going under. So I think it's also facing the facts, like, is it true? It's true that we're having a cash flow issue temporarily, but I think I've told you, we're also have turned the needle in a really big way. And we actually, this month, our sales will be up a couple 100%. So we really did turn it, but during that period, it can be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And then remind yourself it's temporary. Well, so WeBank, how has, this amazing organization that certifies women business owners, and you're a women business owner, I'm a women business owner, and I love women out there making things happen. But how has WeBank been part of your growth?
Yeah, I love that WeBank. I love being part of the organization. I love saying that we're a part of the organization. Organization helps us with buyers. It helps know that we are a certified woman-owned business. That's very respected, and I love being in a part of a network that helps support other women. It's like we all kind of wrap our arms together and like, okay, let's go, because united, we're a bigger force than we are individually. So I know it's really helped us with a lot. We definitely have it on every sales spreadsheet that we have, and we speak to it. So that certification really says a lot. It's one of those things that's like, do you need it? I don't know, but what it really does is it helps. It's like any kind of, stamp of approval, right, that you get, that really helps along the way, going, we are legit, we are certified, this is true, let's move forward.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, so this has just been so great, super inspiring, and I'm sure our listeners are feeling that same way. Do you have any last words of advice for the women business owners that are listening today?
Yeah, I think I would just say that, I often hear a lot of entrepreneurs, especially women, really complain about how hard it is and how many problems there are. And just realize that being an entrepreneur, no matter how much you grow, or if you do get funding and you're still going to have problems, that being an entrepreneur is about solving problems. So really solve problems as quickly as you can, as much as you can, get in there, roll your sleeves up, because what happens is you build a muscle. And in our company, we call it the figure outer muscle. I think Marie Forleo calls it the figure, I don't know, she calls it something kind of similar, but I remember going, hold on, I've said this for years. So what I tell the company, I also let my employees figure things out. So I'm not the only person in the company solving things, I'm like, I can solve it easy, but what I want you to do is you solve it, because that way your muscle gets stronger. And the only thing to do over time, I believe entrepreneurs have just gotten a lot better at figuring things out because they've exercised that muscle so much. So try to figure out things within your own organization before you go outside seeking money, because money doesn't always help, and usually doesn't help an issue. There's usually some core problem that caused that money issue in the first place. And that's what I did with looking at the way our terms were. There was a disconnect in the way we were paying and receiving. That was the problem. The problem wasn't COVID or what happened. It was just we had a little, mess up in our system. So once I fix the systems, now going forward, that'll work a lot smoother.
Ah, that's such great advice, because had you gone out and got the funding, then you have that to pay back, right? So
Exactly.
you got to the core issue
Yep.
and fixed it from there.
Yeah.
This has just been so great, really. The innovation, creativity, alignment, so many things that you shared, so much wisdom, Suzy. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for being here today. I know I absolutely loved it. And so for those of you that this is your first time listening to Women Who Own It and you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. We are on iTunes, we're on Spotify, anywhere that you can listen to podcasts. And if you like this episode, or any of our episodes, please write a review. We would so appreciate that. And until next time, get out there and elevate yourself because you are worth it.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.